good afternoon. This is Malar from Hearts&Minds Development Center. Thank you for joining us. If you have joined us, I know it's a holiday in a couple of places because we are preparing, I suppose, for a better Malaysia. And, we are in series 82 and really, am I happy? Am I excited? I think it's a whole load of different feelings to first introduce the speaker today, my guest, my beautiful friend, Patience Chen. So, how did I meet Patience Chen? I'm always thinking about it just before my program, right? I think I met her through her brother. I think, yeah. If you remember Louis Chen, yeah, he's that wonderful person who forced an introduction with Patience. And Louis, if you're listening, Patience and I have become closer than we are. So that would actually tell us a little bit about, the kind of person Patience is, right? She is really patient. But let's bring her on and find out, just about her. Firstly, I'm not going to introduce her professional self yet because she's had a really interesting journey. But when I was talking to her, I realized she is just so passionate about counseling and to help people heal. So, a healer by nature, and she does everything around it to heal people. So, let's bring Patience Chen on.
Hi,
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes and making it because it's been like, your calendar has been full. So, thank you for joining us, Patience. Now, Patience, it's funny, right? When we connect, and that's my problem, not your problem. Uh, you know, um, I almost don't. Besides the fact that I know you do counseling and you do training, right? I actually don't, and you are Louis Chen's sister. I don't know anything else about your professional journey. And I was looking at your professional journey, right? It is really pretty amazing in the way your journey has shaped, right? From working with Malaysian care to no apologies, right? To what you do now, right? So thriving talents, we understand that training space. Not interested in that space, but not interested, right? But it's really very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about you and what made you join organizations like Malaysian Care and No Apologies and how it shaped you? Okay, so first part, what made you join them? Tell us a bit about yourself and what made you join these two organizations.
Okay, hello, my name is Patience. Okay, so actually, how I joined Malaysian Care, it ties a little bit to my Christian faith. So actually, I did a degree in psychology, and like all psychology graduates, after we finish our studies, we wonder what do we do with ourselves. What is the profession that is set out for us? Because at that time, and this was, I graduated from psychology in 2007. So the field wasn't as developed as it is now. Of course, we were in a very different place in Malaysia at the time. So I asked God, can you give me some direction, on what to do and where to go? And there was no news. Okay, there was no sound coming from him. Yeah, so I decided, okay, God, if you don't have a specific calling for me, I will take a general one, which in the Bible, it says to feed the naked, to clothe the poor, to be, to father the orphan, and to be kind to the widow. So I said, okay, God, if this is your general call to all Christians, so I will go and do this. So I joined Malaysian Care, who was doing a lot of wonderful work at the time, and I got placed in the people's with special needs department. So for the first year of my career, I was working with children with special needs. And I think that really opened my eyes to a lot of different things, to a people group that I never really interacted with, I was afraid of. um, Along the way, I also discovered that maybe this isn't for me because I saw some of my colleagues. Yeah, I mean, it was great that it opened my eyes. I had this awareness and incredible empathy. So later on, I mean, some of you, my brother Lewis. He's legally blind now. Right. So that actually helped me to have different perspective on disability and the kind of access that they need.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, so I served in Malaysian care for 2 years, and then I realized I think this is not for me because I looked at some of my colleagues who found such joy and fulfillment, in their jobs, in teaching people with special needs, and that wasn't me. And I felt very guilty for a while. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have enough empathy. I'm not kind enough, not patient enough, and so on. But then I decided I think it's okay for me to have a different calling, So I asked again, for some direction. I went and did something different for a while. And then later on, I came to focus on the family, you know. And I realized that, as a young person, I made a lot of mistakes, I think in my romantic and personal life. And I thought it was so wonderful that they were doing this great work, going to schools to educate young people about the value of their lives and their bodies, right? And how precious sex actually is. So I decided that was something that I wanted to be a part of. So I did that for 6.5 years, you know. Yeah, and how it came about to me going on to become a counselor is while I was serving in Focus on the Family, I discovered that I needed to go for therapy myself as a client. And I changed in a lot of ways that I didn't expect, that I thought was impossible at the time, you know. Um, and because I saw that transformation in myself and I saw the great hope, at the end, like I never would have thought that I'd become this person. I was so grateful to my therapist and I thought, wow, if I could even do some of that, I think to help somebody, to move from A to B, I think that would be a meaningful life's work, So I quit my job to go and study for 2 years in USM. And then the pandemic hit, and I was very grateful to have this opportunity here at Thriving Talents as well, And Michael is really understanding and has opened a lot of opportunities for me to not just develop as a trainer, but also to use my skills as a counselor, So, yeah, that's in a nutshell my
Nice,
my
nice.
career.
Well, Michael, if you are here, since she gave you some credit, can you say hello? She says a lot of nice things about you. So, Michael, if you are in, then just say hello, lah. But otherwise, we'll send you the recording, no problem. Um, so I know our topic is boundaries, right? Right now, let's just go back a little bit because I think who you are is enriched by all your experiences and the choices that you made, right? And you
Yeah.
were sharing, I mean, as you were sharing, right? I thought like I mean I didn't really think about Malaysian care work, right? Like what I said, I didn't go through much earlier, right? Because I've only seen you as a counselor. And so it was really very interesting because I love the idea of first you getting into Malaysian care because you wanted to serve, and you couldn't. God was not loud enough, and you either God wasn't loud enough, or you just couldn't hear. But it doesn't matter. That's a different conversation. And, I just love that story, right? And how we're all looking for inspiration, for direction. And so you were looking for direction, and you decided to explore. And what I also love is that the fact that you explored and you didn't feel joyful. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important because that probably will help us understand why sometimes we also need boundaries to say yes and no to certain things, right? Because just because something is good doesn't mean you need to stay there. You need to feel that you belong there, right? And then
Yeah.
I also like your transition, right? When you joined Focus on the Family, and they've done amazing work, and you chose no apologies, and you stayed there for 6 years. So can you please help like us understand, so what is the difference for you when one discovering you not belonging to Malaysian care, which is fine, you love the work and all of it, you it's not you, yeah? And then I suppose it felt more like you in Focus on the Family, right? Can you help us understand what was the difference like for you as a person before we go into
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, I think the key difference is what do you feel is the thing that you struggle with, right? So disability wasn't something that I struggle with, or it wasn't a very close challenge in my life, in my experience. But I think my My lack of boundaries, I think, in relationship when I was younger was more significant to me. So in No Apologies, there's a very large section, okay, talking about boundaries. Accepting your no, your yes, being able to communicate those things clearly to have the kind of relationships that you want. I thought those things were more impactful to a young person. As a teenager, it's very easy to just go along with the flow and do what your friends are doing, or your relationship should look what it looks like on TV and so on. And I think it would have helped if there was somebody, a caring adult, to tell me that it doesn't have to be that way, and it's okay. And so I wanted to be that person, for another young person as well. I hope that makes some sense for you.
No, no, it actually makes more than sense, right? And I'm trying to just connect the dots for me. It's not for the audience, it's for me. Now, so I just like your clarity because you're saying that even though you joined Malaysian pair, nothing could hold you on because you there was nothing you were not searching
Mm,
for the answers that was available in that space, right?
mm.
Whereas in no, no.
Focus on
Whereas
the family.
focus on the family, what's
Yeah.
interesting is that you got attracted to that space, but that space kept you there because it kept giving you answers that you were probably unconsciously seeking, and
Mm.
and those answers help you to realize who you are, and you then wanted to be that person for another young person because you had struggled as a young person in
Yes.
many different ways, and focus on the
Yeah.
family sort of brought helped you to see with clarity. And then you say,
Yeah.
I'll stay here long enough. And as you are done with that work, you realize, okay, I'm now, this has prepared me for my next journey, which is I want to be this person for other people, which is why you decided to do your counseling full time for 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I want to add on a little bit about that, because I mean, the work that I was doing at Focus is great. I'm very proud of the organization and what they are doing, and they should continue to do it. But I realized that I was going to a lot of schools and seeing a lot of new students, but I'd see them one time and then I never see them again. So
Mm,
I was telling them that, you guys, you're precious, you're valuable. If you want to see some changes in your life, you need to get mentors, you need to talk to your parents, talk to people who care about you. But I wasn't there to journey with them. And that was the difference that I saw in my counseling journey, which is the same therapist journeying with me through my transformation. Right. And
yes.
so I decided that that was something that I think was much more impactful, for me, and that I wanted to have in my life. I think it's great, different services are needed for different seasons of our life. I think it's all are necessary. You need one time off things, and you need things that are consistent to help you see those transformations through. So I guess
Nice.
that's just where I am in my current journey.
Brilliant. I like different services for different seasons. And as we go through different seasons, right, I think we have different needs, whether it's a coach or a counselor or a therapist that you talk about. I think for me, what I realize is that once you find the right one for you and you're able to journey with them, it's fantastic because I love my
Yes.
therapists.
Yeah.
I love my therapists, I love my mentors, I love my coaches, and I love my friends who act as therapists. So and when you have people journeying with you, it's brilliant. It's you don't have to be alone. And
Yeah.
that's you wanted to journey with people in the ways that they wanted to transform themselves, and you want to be available for them with the tools so that they can discover and transform themselves. Is what you're saying, which led you to counseling, right? Now, so it's really interesting. So if you look at your two jobs, right, Malaysian care and focus on the family, right? At that moment, if you think about boundaries, I'm sure you weren't thinking at that time, right? If you think about boundaries now, if you go back to that space and you think about boundaries now, right? How did boundaries sit with you as a person when you were working in Malaysian care and focus on the family for you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I need to have a little bit of confession because when I first joined Malaysian Care, I was 23 years old and I didn't have very good boundaries. Um, and after only after I left then I read this book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. Have you read
Okay.
the book?
No, I know Henry
Oh,
Cloud. He's amazing. But okay, thanks.
it's a classic book. It's absolute must reading for all young adults. Okay, once you leave
Or
university,
all
please
people
get a
who are young at heart.
yes. Or if you feel like you don't have good boundaries, you need this book. It's so
Yeah.
helpful. I only wish that I had the book before I started working in Malaysian care because I think it would have helped me a lot to become the adult that I needed to be. I think the book really confronted me about the attitudes that I had, and my lack of ownership, in owning or taking being accountable for my attitudes, my beliefs, with regards to myself and to other people. So it's very common, I think, when you don't have good boundaries, you tend to blame others. You tend to be resentful, for certain. I was resentful about certain life circumstances that I had.
Mm.
Um, so I think reading the book helped me to take ownership and say, okay, rather than blaming others, can you see that you have this attitude, right? That you have this need that has gone unspoken and you kind of expected people to kind of read your mind about it, right? So I think that was the key difference for me, um, moving
That's
from one organization to another. Yeah.
so.
And there's,
Yeah. So let's now let maybe you have a couple of nice people who have come in and to say hello. Hi, Jay, my good friend. She says, "Good afternoon, ladies. Looks like an amazing journey, patience, journey of discovery at that." Hi, Gerald. Gerald is our true friend. Turns up most of the weeks. Good afternoon.
oh, hi, Gerald. Hi,
Yeah.
Jay.
And Tangam, hi Tangam. Hi, he says hi Malar and Major. Okay, Major is one of those people in the industry who plays coach and mentor, and he's there to journey. So, have I met? Yeah, I've met a Major. So Major's quite echoes what you say, right? Like if I, when we're having a conversation with Major, Major will say, "Tell me how I can support you in this journey," is what he says. And I've never been his student yet, officially, right? Because he runs brilliant courses on train the trainer and leadership, but I've not been on his course for him to offer that to me. But whenever I talk to him, he offers that to me. How can I be of support to you? And the
Mm,
support he offers is actually long term, right? So, Major, thank you for echoing that. He says, "Hello, Malar patients. Love the idea of the need of coaches and therapies at different stage of our journeys. And some people, can walk through our journey. Some people, we need to leave them behind because they belonged where they belonged in the past, right?
yeah.
Glad, wonderful people like you, that's me, like you, and you creating this awareness. Thanks a lot. Stay blessed. Thank you, Major. Now, so help us understand. So you said that you were not clear of boundaries. Now, I don't think it's just a children thing, but because we don't learn boundaries as children, life becomes more complex and problematic as adults. Because
Mm.
I have struggled with boundaries, still struggle with boundaries, and I only know once I mess it up, right? Like, and you're absolutely right. I'm going to read Henry Cloud's book because you're absolutely right. Because a part of me, I get so upset because I generally don't. Ideally, I don't want boundaries. It's just like the house I live. I don't like grills. I don't like gates. I really don't like it, right? But having said that, the way I have started off and I continue in relationship, I go by my heart and say, oh, okay, I can trust this person. Open up, and then shit happens, right? So then clean up lah. Then as you're cleaning up, you are so angry, so called, at that person. But what I've realized, like what you rightly say, it is my attitude. It's the way I think because I didn't have clarity, right? And that's why I caused it. So, and the good news is if I caused it, I can solve it. If another person caused it, then I have a problem, right? So
Yeah.
maybe what can help us with, while going through, I think anyone can struggle with boundaries. Help us define boundaries first, and then we look at, how not having the right sort of boundaries can get us into the shit.
Sure. So, very basically, a boundary is a line. It can be visible or invisible, And it
Mm,
basically helps us to demarcate where does our property begin and where does it end.
mm.
So that's a very basic idea of what a
Sounds very
boundary
legal.
looks like.
It's
Yes, I
like,
suppose. Yes,
yeah,
legal stuff always drawing the lines, right? Yeah.
if you took away property and make it human, right? I think it's for me, if I can just rework that in my own head, right? Looking at me as a property, I think looking at me as a person, I'm valuable, right? And being valuable, where do I need to draw my line so that my value does not erode? My value as a person is not eroded by not having healthy boundaries. Would that be
Yeah, I think that's different people have different perspectives about value. But for me, I think that no matter what you do or what somebody does to you, it doesn't diminish your value at all,
yeah? And
right?
that's isn't that why I need boundaries?
Oh yeah, you do need boundaries. Everybody needs it, but I think for the sake of being able to stay in control of our lives and not feeling like our life is subject to other people's wish and demands, right? Do we see that we have responsibility and ownership of our lives? So that can be a crushing statement for some people. You are responsible for your life. Like, oh, that's like such a heavy burden. But on the other hand, it can be so liberating, right? You are responsible for your life. So you get to choose whatever life it is that you want to live, right? Like it's how you look at it, isn't it?
I'm laughing at it and thinking like why would someone be upset about being responsible? But then I realized some of us actually enjoy being victims, right? So I think yes. So for what I had to think is like, of course I have to think about the times I enjoyed being victim lah because I'm not. I got into that space. So and exactly right, right? Because if I'm contributing to the problem, then I can be the solution, right? If I'm responsible for life, then I take control of life. And if I want to be in control of my life, I need to take control. And for that to happen, what you're saying is that I need boundaries.
Yes.
Okay, to be in control of your life. So that's why we need boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in your experience, right? I'm just wondering. So, going into boundaries again, is do you see a differentiator? I probably know the answer. I think as I'm talking, do you it? See boundaries and assertiveness as different, same,
Oh,
space?
they are. Yes, sort of. I think they are very, very close cousins, so to speak. They are
Yeah.
very closely related and connected. I think it's quite difficult to have boundaries if you have no assertiveness.
And vice versa, right? When you have boundaries and someone crosses it, then you need to be assertive to keep the line.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. I feel like most of the time personally, when I think about having a boundary, it is, or that when I say somebody has a boundary issue, usually I'm thinking they have no boundaries. But actually, the opposite can be true as well. Sometimes people, they put very hard boundaries in place to keep all things out, whether it is good or bad, or maybe they only allow the bad things in, and they keep all the good things out, right? I don't allow myself to receive love. I don't allow myself to ask for help. It's very difficult for me to have needs. So I think, yes, the assertiveness is necessary to enforce boundaries, but I think there also needs to be a gentleness, a softness to kind of allow ourselves to receive legitimate things that we need in our life as well. So, am I making sense here? Do you get where I'm
No,
going?
you're making a lot of sense because the way I differentiate it is that for me, I need words to differentiate, right? So I
Hmm.
differentiate between having boundaries and having walls.
Yes.
So for me, it's like a
Yes.
metaphor, right? Because
Yes, I think that's
boundaries
a great
are
one.
the lines, right? And I
Mm.
always say, like I just said that in my video. I imagine, so for me, when I think about boundaries, I think about driving on the road and deciding how the road is, right? Do I need a single line? Do I need a double line? Single line means, oh, I'm not crossing your space. Double line means we are not crossing each other's path, just stay in your space, right? And
Yeah.
then I realized that, there are times I'm okay for the dotted lines, because the dotted lines is where I see when is it safe for me to come over and for you to come over. And there would be times, there would be spaces I'll feel safe enough that I don't want these lines. But it will not be all the time. It's something I'm
Yes.
learning how to accept.
I think that's such a great analogy, such a great visual, to have for life, because we have different parts of the journey at different times. I want to cross over, and sometimes, like, okay, this is a no through road. Okay, we're going to just park here for a short
Yeah,
while. Yeah, I think that's such a
that
great
was for me.
metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, except that I thought, so what where I've shifted is that I thought at some point in time in life the dotted lines will totally be erased. That was my ideal. I'm accepting at this moment. I could change my mind later, but at this moment, I have realized that ideal doesn't exist. That's what for me it's like, okay, just know when to have it, when not to have it, and just be clear about it. And there's no
Yeah.
life, I can't live without boundaries, because that's that safety that I need for myself, right? And
Yes.
and I suppose if I want to go into this free reign road where there are no lines and no boundaries, it has to be with my own tribe of people who know the boundaries even when I don't draw them,
Yes.
right?
So
So,
in
and
fact, there's always a boundary. It's just
yeah,
that
but it's
it's
not it's not
yeah,
visible, because people know your boundaries, know you
yeah,
enough to know where it
yeah,
stops, right? So I think that's a part that I'm actually getting. Lovely. So for
yeah.
me the difference is really boundaries and walls, because when we build walls to protect ourselves, then if you're trying to be safe, it's two ways, right? On one end you are safe, on another end you never get to live your life, because you don't get to receive, what
Yeah.
you say. Now,
Yeah.
so help me understand this, right? When you say you did say, sometimes when we build, very strict boundaries, which I call walls, and we don't allow things to happen for us. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think that would give us light to why some of us are afraid to set the boundaries, right? So, what is it that we really, really need
Oh, what is it that we need? Is it?
as human beings, right?
All of us need love. We need acceptance. We test boundaries because we want to see the limits, right? Those of you who have children, you know that your children will test the boundary a little bit, right? I think for a few reasons. Number one, they want to see what is allowed, what isn't allowed. But I think sometimes I think, okay, this is a theory that I have, is that sometimes you want to cross over the boundary to know that we will still be loved and accepted on the other side after we've made some mistakes.
Mm,
It's a theory. Yeah. But when you're talking about putting up walls, why do people do that, right? At the core of it, all of us, whether you have no boundaries or very sturdy walls, actually at the core of it, I think all of us are looking for love and acceptance, and we fear rejection.
mm, nice.
Hmm.
So, in the people that you've met and the people you've worked with, because this question has come up, right? Um, what what are we afraid of when we're trying to set boundaries, or rather, the challenges?
What are we afraid of when it comes to setting boundaries, or what are the challenges that we face in setting boundaries? Is it?
Mm,
Oh, okay. I think we're afraid of upsetting other people. We're afraid of disappointing others. And especially if those people are core or critical to us and our self esteem, our needs for approval, right? For most of us, would be our parents. Especially in Asian culture, they play such a big role in our lives. We go and study certain subjects to please our parents. We go for certain jobs to earn a certain salary, to help them feel assured that we are successful, right? That we can take care of ourselves, even if it may not really be what we want, right? For fear of disappointing them, for fear of not having their approval, for fear of being rejected in some way by them, upsetting them if I don't have the kind of wedding that they expect me to have.
I get that. I get that. I get that. So,
And I think it's normal, okay, to want the approval of your parents and your loved ones.
mm,
Yeah, I think it's just that in our desire to please these authority figures in our life, did we fail to hear ourselves and our own desires and wants?
nice,
Did you betray yourself
nice.
in some way,
Oh,
in
nice.
giving in to others? So if you're able to fulfill the needs and happiness of others while being true to yourself, then praise God, hallelujah. No problem for you. The issue is when there's a conflict between those two things, right?
So, the example that you give is so crucial, right? Because we are bound by, we are sold an idea of love,
Mm,
right? And we buy into the word called love, right? And so, if you think about it, acceptance, when I'm accepted, I feel loved. When I'm rejected, I don't feel loved. So, the reason I may not
yes.
want to, I may not want to build or draw the boundary is because if I say this and if I say this is the line in relationships that's powerful, that matters to me, like what you said, I'm afraid I'll be rejected. And when I'm rejected, not accepted, I would feel I'm not loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is something I think, I think as a mother, I will say I struggle, to, but because my children are teens now, right? And they've gone from being mommy's big fan to maybe well, they need to look hard to what mommy is doing right, and that feels like rejection for me. I don't know whether they feel rejected. I think I feel rejected is more like what's really happening for me, and I need to keep convincing myself. I need to do this thing in my head to say, no, 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 no. They're just growing up. They're thinking differently. So I need to realign myself, right? And I need to also set my boundaries. Is what I realized. Even in my mother-child relationship, where I thought there were no boundaries, and there were no boundaries in the past when they were younger. But now they have drawn their boundaries, and I need to also now become clear and say, okay, this is where you don't cross, even
Yeah.
though you're a child, kind of a thing, right? So help us, I don't know, I know this is a bit out because I think it's important. If we had to define love,
Mm.
what is it?
Wow. That's such a deep question.
I know because you brought it up. I know we have, I mean, because that's a whole thing, right? Because we need boundaries in relationships that's loving, because we don't get to be ourselves,
Mm.
right? It's like a double-edged sword, right? And at the same
Yeah.
time, if I have my boundaries, chances of rejection is high. And sometimes I trade, what you said is so powerful, right? I trade myself, who I am, to become who you want me to be accepted by
Yes.
you, right? So I lose a part of me to become what you want me to be, right? And they're both, they we can come together, right? If both parties can define and agree on what is love.
Gosh. If that were the case, then there will be it's like a utopia, okay? I think the problem is that all of us kind of have different expectations or interpretations of what love is. For some people, love is just being there, right? Just being consistently available. It doesn't mean you have to do everything for me, but just the fact that I come home and you are there for me. And
Okay.
for some people, love is, I want you to make effort to take me out, right? To still take me on dates, to romance me. That's love. And so different. I think it's different for everybody, and those are things that need to be negotiated and communicated. But when it comes to boundaries, I guess the question that I have is, if somebody says no to you, does that mean that they don't love you?
Nice.
Or does
Nice.
it mean that, love means never having to say no, which can't be true either, right? Because as a parent, if you love your child, you're not going to say yes to them eating ice cream every night, right?
Mm.
There needs to be certain limits, and I have those limits because I love you.
Exactly. Exactly the point, right? I think, I mean, that's in terms of me having boundaries because I love you. But I think for myself, I have boundaries because I love myself.
Yes.
It's love is two ways, right? So as much as I want to love you and I want to give you that love, but sometimes I need to retract back to love myself, which is why the boundary becomes extremely important for me as an act of self-love. If I look at two people in a relationship as equals, right? Don't
Yes.
expect me to love you more than I love myself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that becomes the trading factor for a lot of people. Even parents, right? If you love me, you would do this. If you love me, you would become this. And there's so much of control in the name of love,
Yeah.
right? It's just like where we when we talk to teenagers, right? Where we talk about my parents are paying for my education, so I need to do what they want me to do. So the exact act of love of educating your child now backfires because you took away their love for life by making them do what they actually really don't want to do. So it's right. So boundaries are. I think what what we're recognizing is that if there are boundaries, it's not because I don't love you, but maybe my boundaries is because I love myself, and you don't get it.
I will say that it can't also be I only ever say yes to me and I always say no to
Yeah.
you,
Mm.
right? There needs to be both. I need to be able to hear no and accept that, there is love there. And I also need to be able to receive yes from you sometimes and hope that you also will be willing to say yes to me, because that's a relationship, right? That we give to one another. It's not always only one person giving and the other receiving. That wouldn't be an equal relationship. That is a servant master relationship there, right?
Nice. So we sort of try to understand what is love, but we are not going to define because we need to come back to a whole program to define love. But before we say, oh, I would, if I think about love now that say I'm a bit more grown up, for me, love is any thought, feeling, and action that I do for myself and for another person that is for my greater good and for another's greater
Mm.
good, right? So anything that I don't do for a greater good or it diminishes you as a person, it's not an
Mm.
act of love at all for me. So
Mm.
that's for me.
Yeah.
It's my clarity because especially because I with my children, I
Yeah.
really keep asking. I need to like pause and say, okay, is this a loving thing to do? Right? Is
Yes.
it a
Yeah.
loving thing to do? Is it good for them? Especially when it comes to discipline, right?
Yes.
And what's important for them. Now,
Uh,
so yeah.
no, 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 stop. I want to say that I think that's such a great definition for love, because it really ties in so well with this concept of boundaries.
Mm,
So when I put down a boundary or I want to lower a wall, is that in the service of my greater good and another person's greater good?
exactly.
Right. So I think that's a great way to think about whether this boundary is actually healthy. Am I actually helping this person, by saying yes or no to this thing?
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I feel so clever now. Yeah. See, so now I'm in a relationship, in a loving relationship, and love here is really, defined in the greater good that we're talking about. And it can be a
Mm,
personal relationship, it can be a professional relationship, right? Now, and then I realized that I've not set boundaries. So I'm in a good relationship with you. I really love,
mm,
patience and all of that. Now, suddenly, so I've always lived in this like no lines, right? Life with you. I started off that way. And then somewhere along the line, I realized, I'm not too sure whether I get to be myself, whether, I feel like I have a need to draw the boundaries for self-love right now. What what do you think? So for people who are now just beginning to realize I need boundaries in certain close relationships, especially that's when it's difficult, right? I have a relationship. I've never thought about boundaries. Now I know I have to set boundaries as an act of self-love, right? How do I now prepare myself first? Before I even communicate boundaries, I need to prepare myself. How do I do that? What do I need to think about, or what do I need to understand?
Yeah. I think it's really important. In the book, Doctor, in this boundaries book, they talk about how you need to bond first. Bonding
Nice.
first and boundaries second. So, what does
Nice.
that mean? You need to have a very strong base and support network, people who will reaffirm your worth and your value when you need to enforce boundaries. Because the moment you start enforcing boundaries, especially with people that you didn't have boundaries before, you can expect resistance. That's almost guaranteed, that people are not going to react well to your boundaries. There will be some reactions, okay? There may be shouting, I don't know, all right? But basically, or guilt tripping, a lot of guilt tripping, I presume, would be
How can
happening.
you do this to me after all
Yeah, exactly. Do you not love me?
I can dramatize this so well. Because all this
Yes.
drama that I play even with my kids in my head lah. So I like so bond before boundaries. Let's talk a little bit about bond, right? So for me, the languaging that comes whenever we're talking about assertiveness is that if you want something, if you want a relationship to work and you want to have difficult conversation, you need to make sure you have the conversation while you're in rapport.
Yes.
Okay. So, but what
Yes.
you said was you said two things, which I think is fantastic, right? So I can understand that first and foremost, I need to make sure you and I are friends, like we're bonding, we are in rapport, right? Number one. But you also spoke about support because while I might be in rapport with you, when I am setting boundaries, just at that moment, your reaction, your immediate reaction could be that of rejecting me. I don't want to talk to you. You go silent because you need your own space, right? And you need some time to just get through this, right? So there might be an immediate sense of rejection. So is that
Yeah.
why you're saying that when that? So what happens for me is when someone immediately rejects me, and I used to struggle with this a lot. Immediately reject me, then I feel, oh my gosh, they are rejecting me, and I have self doubt,
Yeah.
right? And you're right, my self worth, did I do the right thing? Am I good
Mm.
enough?
Yeah.
Question comes through. And for me, the way it's worked is that I've had good friends like Jay, who come and affirm me and say, actually, what you're doing is, they ask me some question and help me to accept that actually I'm okay, right? So are you talking about those two things, the way I'm looking at it, or tell me what is it you were saying?
Yeah, so I think the bonding first. I'm speaking quite specifically, I think, to people who are not used to putting boundaries in their life, especially with
Mhm.
people who are close to them, right? So there is a tendency that when any kind of rejection or anger or is disappointment is directed at you, that your ego is quite fragile, and that's normal. Okay, that is okay, all right. But knowing that, okay, if your ego is fragile, that means you have a tendency to, okay, all right, maybe this boundary is too uncomfortable for the person, so I will adjust my boundary or remove it altogether. So
Mm.
having the strong support in reaffirming your worth and your decision, okay, is what is going to help you to serve your greater good. Does that make sense?
I'm sense we can make, but I'm a little. Well, sense making is pretty easy for trainers. We can like. So, let's talk about ego, and I think this is a big one, right? So, if both of us, so you're setting boundaries, right? Let me be the more powerful person, right? So, you're setting boundaries because I obviously have, you know, acted in a way where you feel you need to set a boundary. So you set the boundaries, and I'm egoistic. That's easy for me, right? Like, oh, Bruce, how can she do that to me? I'm her boss. I'm older than her. All of those big stuff that I've thrown myself, right? I'm the parent, right? The parent ego, right? And I'm feeling that way. How can you do that to me? And my ego is bruised or broken, whatever that is, right? So are you saying that now because my ego is bruised, you're going to withdraw that? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, I'm saying that when you reject me,
Ah,
okay, that my ego will be hurt. I can't withstand that rejection from you. So I
okay,
need people
okay,
on my side,
okay, got it.
to reassure me of my worth so that I won't falter, that I will still act in my great
You
in
will keep
the
with your
service of.
decision if you know that's the right thing to
Yes.
do. But what if my ego is bruised?
You have to allow that the person to experience the discomfort. That's part of
But
one of the rules of
patience,
boundaries.
you're my friend. I expect you to empathize with me. How
Mm.
can you do this to me when I'm feeling so? My ego is broken. How can you do this to me?
Yeah, I know this is very uncomfortable for you.
And
That's something that you need to sit with.
I want to kill you. I really need to take responsibility for my ego being bruised and broken. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Oh my
absolutely,
god.
100%.
So if you're looking for patience as a counselor, as fun as she is, as beautiful as she is, she's going to hold you accountable, is what I'm hearing, right? Now, so let's say that my ego is bruised. So as a person who's setting the boundaries, I'm feeling rejected. So my ego is bruised. So what I do is I need to make sure that self-doubt doesn't creep in and I become clear. And which is why I need support. But despite the support, let's say it's a very important relationship, a powerful relationship. It could be, you setting boundaries with your boss. I'm the boss, right? Your career is in mine, right? Or it could be a parent-child. I'm still supporting your education, okay? Right? All these years, all right? You think about how much I paid for your studies, okay? I worked all right. So that's a powerful relationship. Or spouse, right? I want to give a typical example where the husband has more money than the wife. Typical example, not a real example anymore, but typical. Okay, I feel so good saying it, right? So husband holds the power because or whoever has money holds the power. Let's put it that way. That's more like the real, right? So you don't try to be funny with me because then I'll cut down your allowances. I won't do this for you. I won't do. In that kind of relationship, how do we inch into and we might be clear, but to execute the boundary can be quite challenging. So help us figure that out. I know we can come to you for counseling, but before that,
Yeah, I was not prepared for this question, Mala. I think it is hard, I think those are very tricky situations, and when you try to enforce boundaries in those areas, you actually need to really be prepared for some major consequences, and that's why I don't judge anybody for not being able to enforce boundaries in certain aspects of their life, because sometimes they're not in a position to be able to do that. They don't have enough leverage in the relationship, right? So it depends on that. And definitely there are going to be instances of complete injustice, that people violated people's, rights and their bodies even, and those are things that, I don't expect that person to, don't you dare touch me, okay, because maybe your life is at stake as well, right? So I don't have a good answer for that, unfortunately, except to say
I
that.
think what you gave is a good answer
Mm.
because what you gave is a good answer, right? Because I think we know what is right and good for us, but we may be in helpless situation where we can't execute what is
Yes.
right and good, and that's because I think sometimes by choice and sometimes by circumstances we get into relationships where we are not equals,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
if we are in relationships that we are equals, then chances of it happening, it can happen because we can always trespass into another person's space without unconsciously by habit and whatever not. but we can always negotiate it and win it back, right?
Yes.
And it is important for us to understand. For me, the answer you gave me is a damn good answer, because in reality, first, before people can be clear, they need to be clear. Before we can set our boundaries, we need to know that we are safe, that we are not helpless, right? um,
Yeah.
and, and that's why I think, you know, we need better people in the world, right? Yeah, we need better people in the world who treat people like people. And when people are not treated like people and they are hurt and they need healing, which is why people like you help people heal, right? Through your counseling, right? Nice. So, last question. Oh my God, I enjoyed this conversation so much. We need to do a podcast. I keep saying this to many of my guests. We need to do a podcast, right? So, tell us, for people who know they need to set boundaries, may not be in reality helpless,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, in reality, I may not be helpless. So it's like how, when we do corporate training, they say, "Oh, if I tell my boss no, I'll die, or I'll be blacklisted." And then you ask them, "So, do you know anyone who's blacklisted?" No. Then how do you know? Because I heard the ghost stories from people, or I picked it up somewhere, right? So there's something. So tell me, so for people who realize they need to set boundaries, but then there's this voice somewhere, right? Telling them I'll be in trouble, or I'm not willing to pay the price of setting boundaries. What
Mm.
are the consequences on the self when you can do and you don't?
Oh, what are the consequences of
On
not
the,
setting boundaries when actually you are in a position to do so?
yeah,
Right? Because we have this narrative of, I have no choice. What
correct.
can I do? Right? But actually, we do. Right? In a lot of circumstances, not every circumstance, but in a lot of circumstances, we do. So, what are some of the consequences of that? Is you lose your sense of self, right? You have resentment, you have anger, you blame, you have poor self-care, because I'm so busy taking care of your needs, and fulfilling your responsibilities, I neglect to take care of my own backyard, right? I neglect to take care of my own heart, myself. Sometimes it could be allowing other people to take advantage of you. Sometimes it could be enabling unhealthy behavior because I'm unwilling to let other people endure the consequences of their choices because I take on the consequences for them, right? Uh, I think the common one is acting mostly out of guilt, out of obligation, out of fear, rather than this is an act of love and free will, right?
Nice.
So yeah, I think those are some of the key ones I would say. So you stand to lose a lot and so much to gain if you choose, to start standing up for yourself and to confront. It's the unwillingness to sit or to live with another person's displeasure with you. Right. I think it's what really prevents us from
Oh, that's so
setting
beautiful.
boundaries.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Oh gosh, let me see if I can get it exactly right. The
I'm willing to say,
unwillingness to sit with another person's displeasure or discomfort with you.
oh, oh, it's nice. Yeah, because that's what we are struggling, right? Unwilling to sit when someone shows displeasure because we want to be ourselves, right? And that's so powerful because when just because I'm uncomfortable that you don't find my action or my decision pleasurable, I now serve to please you. And as a result, I diminish myself,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And when I diminish myself, all of those things happen, right? I diminish myself, guilt appears, resentment appears. In fact,
Yeah.
I think, loss of self respect, right? Because I can't even
Yes.
look after myself, right? And where is integrity in all of this?
It
And
becomes a vicious cycle,
yeah,
really, you
and
know. Mm.
confidence and esteem. So there's so much of damage that happens to the self, is what you're saying. And that's like
Yes.
so beautiful. So the faster we get used to people have not feeling happy about our choice, and we can sit with it, we're good to go. Is that what I'm
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
summary?
I mean, another way that I would challenge people to think is if you enforce the boundary, you will be uncomfortable.
Mm,
But as it stands, even without enforcing the boundary, you are already uncomfortable.
nice.
So, which discomfort are you willing to live with, right? You've already tried this method, and how's it been working for you? Probably not very well. So, why not try something different and see if there
Mm,
will be a different outcome for you?
okay. So yeah, but that's my displeasure. But I think
Mm.
my own discomfort is one thing. But I think for me, what's powerful is learning how to sit when the other person
Yes.
shows displeasure. They're going to, just show you, right? I'm not happy,
Mm.
I'm angry, I'm disappointed. They're going to say things to you, or they're going to, give you different sense of rejection. You have to live with that now, because now, oh my God,
Yeah.
I think
Yes. Yes.
the faster I get through that, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
empowered. Nice, nice. Any last piece of wisdom beyond the wisdom that you've given us today, patience? Any other piece of wisdom you want to live with about boundaries to those who are listening in now or watching now, but definitely for the people who are going to listen later?
Mm. I think just to write on that last comment that we were talking about, is that other people's displeasure or discomfort with you doesn't diminish your worth, you know? Like it feels as if, your value is diminished somehow, but it's not.
Mm,
Yeah. And I
mm,
think it's okay. And it gets better with practice.
nice.
Yeah.
It's exercising a muscle in the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And feeling the discomfort, and after that, feeling stronger, looking at your muscles and saying, okay, next.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, Patience, for
Thank
the
you, my dear, for
long
having me.
awaited interview. I love you
I love you too.
and loved the conversation. I learned a lot. I got a
Yay.
lot of clarity and some compliments. So, can I say please go and vote tomorrow?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
100%. Please
So,
go and vote, everybody.
and that's part of actually learning how to first define who we are and our rights, and setting our boundaries by voting
Exactly.
right people who treat us like an equal, so that we then don't have to suffer and struggle. So thank you. God bless you. I see you when I see you again. So with that, as we say bye to patients, I hope you enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I know I put patient under a little bit of pressure, but it didn't work. So this is Mother. Before I sign off, thank you for joining us in Being Whole, Being Me series 82. If you're watching later, just remember to subscribe to our YouTube. We've got exciting stuff coming. And today's Friday, it's a holiday and it's quiet. That's because tomorrow is a very important day. Please exercise your right by voting. With that, signing off until I see you next week with our last exciting guest for the year. Until I see you, stay safe and vote right.